CTV 18 exclusive. As you can see on your screen, sources suggest that the Rajasthan government is seeking more royalty from Cairn. Rajasthan government is not satisfied with the 15% royalty paid by Cairn. Nenta Rai joins in with these exclusive details. Nenta, what are you picking up?
Hi, Reeman. Happy birthday, Mangam. So what I understand from my sources is that it's not just the centre, but even the state government that wants the entire production sharing contract, the fiscal term, to be overhauled. So far on CNBC TV 18 since last year, we've been talking about how the centre wants a bigger piece of the action, that it wants a higher share of the profit petroleum, which is already standing at about 40%. So it'll be interesting to see what the government arrives at. But this is something we just picked up, that the state government also unsatisfied with what it's earning from the prolific Barmer oil hills. It gets 15% royalties. If you look at FY15, the state government earned about 3,100 crore rupees. That's what we stated in the annual report of the company. And the state government feels this is a paltry figure when we compare it to the 19,000 crore rupees that was earned by the exchequer. Now, the royalty rate is actually fixed by the centre for all states. It's not like every state can have its own royalty rate. So if the Rajasthan government is unsatisfied with this and refuses to give its NOC, it's going to be interesting days ahead to see how it is that the Vasundhara Raje government is going to extract a higher share. If it's not going to be in terms of royalty, could it be a new financial head that we might see in the fiscal term of the production sharing contract, which expires in May 2020, and Cairn is seeking a 10-year extension.
Nenda, one quick follow-up question. Anything that you're picking up from your sources, whether the additional amount that the Rajasthan government is seeking will come in from Cairn, or do you think the centre will shell out some of the money that it gets, some of the royalty that it gets, and passes it on, or shares it with the Rajasthan state government?
Reema, I cannot remember the last time when the centre has actually done that. You've seen the 14th Finance Commission, also the devolution that has been announced. I don't think that is what's going to be the case. What I am made to understand is that Cairn is negotiating with both of them. In fact, Cairn is saying that, lower our cess. You increased the cess last time when crude was at $100. It's now below $60, below $50. Okay. You should, in fact, be increasing our cess. So I don't think the government is essential.
So it'll go from Cairn's pockets.
And ONGC. Don't forget ONGC also.
And how much could it go up by from the current 15%? Any early indications?
Early days, because this is all at the negotiating table. The centre, what I understand, is looking at a 5% increase. But like I told you, the royalty rate for the state, that is decided by the centre, and it is common across India. It's not like Karnataka will make more or Andhra Pradesh will make more than Rajasthan, right? This is a uniform rate. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Vasundhara Raje is quite unhappy with it. So are we going to see a new kind of a duty, a new kind of a levy, which is going to be specific for the Barmer field, because it is also not a NES block.
All right, Nandara, stay on. We're also joined by Piyush Jain of Morning Star to give us more details or an analysis on this one. Piyush, what do you make of this story that the Rajasthan government is not satisfied with the 15% royalty that has come in or come from Cairn last year? So, if they do revise it upwards, how much of a material negative it would be for all these companies?
I think it will be early for me to actually comment on the EPS impact. But what is more important to understand here is, because of the crude fall, I think the government would be more dissatisfied with the absolute royalty figure. And for Cairn India, I think any increase in the royalty at the current crude rates would not make sense. It would be very detrimental for them, because it will very severely impact their operating margins here, because almost we believe that anything below $40 crude price would be like very hurting for returns on invested capital for them. And given the very low crude margin at present, I think increase in the royalty would not be warranted. And I doubt actually that the union government would actually go ahead and increase the royalty just in the current crude environment.
Okay, so you believe it's unlikely, considering
it's unlikely, because I think it's well known that even ONGC and Cairn, they both are at present struggling in the low crude price environment. But let's remember, because Cairn has an onshore oil block, so it still has a better margin in terms of the block per se. But overall, I think it's highly unlikely at present. We would be very negatively surprised if it turns out to be.
Thanks. Hi, this is Nantara. What I also wanted to ask you was that, the royalty rate is something that the centre decides for all states, right? I think the big fear that Cairn is having, I'm picking up from my sources, is that even if that 15% doesn't go up, what is the Vasudha Raje government decides, I'm not going to give the NOC unless there is some kind of a new sales tax, any new financial head that comes in. You might be in a down cycle now, but, there are up cycles that happen as well. And the government quite clear, it's been a sweetheart deal for Cairn. So, how real is that fear?
Piyush?
Oh, yeah. So, I think that the fear definitely would be there. And I think over the last 2-3 years, Cairn has been seeing all types of fear, whether it's field extension, negotiation on the royalty rates. So definitely that overhang is going to remain, and that will play a part on the stock price. And as we have been seeing over the last 2-3 years, I think the regulatory fears and totally no clarity on the pricing, on the royalty, I think that is going to play a part. Till government doesn't give clarity. So yeah, it's going to remain there.
Piyush,
and Piyush, the other thing I wanted to ask you was, the proposed merger that is there of Cairn and Vedanta. When the independent board decided on that 1:1 swap ratio, at that time there was none of this talk really of the government wanting a higher share. The centre saying, I'm not satisfied with 40% profit petroleum, 5% or 50% going forward. How do you think all of that is going to augur as well for this proposed merger, the minority shareholders, etc.?
So, Nanda, when at that time I was there at the CNBC and I was expressing my opinion that what we were seeing that the commodity prices were going to go low and going to remain subdued for some time. And at that time, we were quite unhappy over the deal terms being extended to minority shareholders. And I think over the last 6-9 months, what we have seen that commodity prices have justified that. And it would be, and it's still, even the terms, the hangover of the royalty rates remains on the Cairn stock. I think it will be very, very hard for the Vedanta management to push the merger of the Vedanta and Cairn in front of the minority shareholders. I think for minority shareholders, this deal remains unattractive at the current terms.
Piyush, just one quick question coming back to the earlier story. Is it true that the current profit share for the fields of Cairn peaks out at 40%, while the share for other large fields such as Reliance's KG-D6 field extends up to 85% of profit share? Would that be correct? And therefore, if a revision in profit share is made as a precondition for approval of extension, it would warrant perhaps a derating of Cairn?
It can warrant a derating, but then it depends what is the extent of profit sharing. Because let's remember, the dynamics of the onshore rice and block is very, very different from any deep water, ultra deep water block. Cairn has a very good profit margin there. So it really depends what sort of negotiation happens, and also what sort of royalty revisions or any sort of profit sharing increase happens.
All right, Piyush and Antara, thanks so much for giving us that story and explaining it. By the way, keep your eye on markets. On one hand, you've got Reliance Industries, which has stumbled to the low point of the day with a fall of close to about